So I've taken the time to go through the 2025 NRL schedule for a fantasy and Supercoach perspective, and I've cut out who everyone's playing. It's all about the bye schedule. When teams have their best runs, who would be best to start with in terms of teams focus rather than players focus, and mixing in some of these guys that maybe don't have the best schedule just because they fit in to the puzzle pieces of the other teams. And you look at the Titans, who do have a bye in round one. Is it smart, or is it good to have one of these guys in your team that has a nice role going forward from round two, likely, and they're going to be in the team, or it's a very high likelihood of 90% or so that they are going to be in that side. Is the Storm having a bye in round two? There are players in that team that you're interested in. Some people looking at a Munster. You might be looking at a Harry Grant. Is it cool to have those guys because maybe after their bye, they're going to be in a really good spot, or you could loop them in that week that they do have a bye. So mixing in the odd player or two from some of these sides that do have a bye in that first 5 rounds, I think is going to work out really well, along with focusing on players that you get a really nice stretch of games where they don't have a bye. Sometimes it's good to have a player that does have a bye in those weeks, and other times it's not. We've seen in previous years, guys like Isaiah Yeo, they've had a bye very early on, whether it's round 3, round 5 in the previous couple of years, and he was still the best pick and still the correct pick from round 1, which a lot of people haven't done in the last few years. And I imagine a lot of people will look to someone like Isaiah Yeo as a real centerpiece for their side going into this season. When you look at the Panthers, they do have their first bye in round 11. So that's something that is a big change from previous years. And we've got guys like Cleary. We have guys like Isaiah Yeo who could be people's captains in round 1. Someone like Payne Haas with their first bye in round 12 could be a really good centerpiece for your side as well. So I do think when you look at the schedule, the first thing you need to look at is your captaincy. The biggest thing that can cause some headaches in certain rounds is that if your captain has a bye, or if they happen to get a random injury, do you have a secondary guy's back up? And if they don't have a bye in that first 10 rounds or so, that can take one headache away. Obviously, having a weak head knock injury, some type of week or 2 injury, it's not inevitable, but it's definitely a fairly high chance of happening. But I said, if you take away that bye, that's automatic, then you leave it up to, you leave it less up to chance that you're going to be missing your captain for certain weeks. So start with that. You have a look at your vice captain as well. Can you have 2 really good guys in your side that you can interchange as captain, whether it's a Cleary and a Payne Haas, whether it's a Yeo and Haas, those types of combinations that don't fall on the same bye schedule, but they can cover you for a captaincy straight up. The second thing is looking at guys that can be close to keepers. So last year, Jacob Kiraz was the guy that I targeted as a player that's unlikely to play Origin, and he had a really, really nice schedule. Once you got through their bye in, I believe, round 7 or round 8, you were able to use him as a guy that could cover you through the entire bye period. And then once you get that through that bye period, it's very easy to get through with one of those guys all the way through to the end of the season. So I earmarked him in the preseason last year. And there are going to be certain players or teams that you could look to target that can get you through a very long period of time. And then, by the time you get through that long period, if they're a keeper, they can just stay in your team for the rest of the year. So we'll go through that as well. And let's kick it off from round 1. So we do have the Titans in round 1. It's Storm in round 2, Dragons in round 3, Knights in round 4, Warriors in round 5, Bulldogs in round 6, Cowboys in 7, and Eels in 8. So I think that sets it as the important teams to have a look at it. And maybe if you've got someone who's a 50-50 selection with another player from a team that doesn't have a bye up through that period, then that could be a swaying decision in your side when you're looking at a certain schedule. So just some simple things to look at with those early buys. But then following that, we have to look at the best times to buy these players and the best times to sell these players. Let's go through one team at a time and kick it off with the Titans. And then once we've done that, we'll go through some of the runs that do stand out of when they don't have a bye, or a period of time where they might have a bye in a standalone week, or in a week where if you can get through that week, they become really, really nice to hold for the longer term. So for the Titans, they have their buys in round 1, 12, and 18. So they're fairly spaced out, but I don't know how much that helps a team having a buy in round 1. I personally don't think it's great, but that's what they've got, and then it's 12 and 18. So they're well spaced out, at least from that point. They get through round 1, they've got to get through 11 rounds from there into their round 12 bye. But if you are looking at Titans, I think you can get through with 1 in your starting team, and then from round 2 you can look to purchase a bunch of these guys because they have a really, really nice stretch. And the big thing with the bye period this year is getting your head around it not being round 13, 16, and 19 when all of the teams miss. It's actually 12, 15, and 18 this year, with the minor buys being 13, being 16, and 19 on that front. It's very much the same schedule this year, so that's easy enough, I think, for fantasy and Supercoach guys, that you're going to get through and knowing how this thing sets up, and you've got 2 years of data now that you can play off to see how all this goes. But yeah, that's the Titans, 1, 12, and 18. Buy them in round 2. They then miss the big buy, obviously in round 12, but they have a standalone buy. Sorry, and then they miss the second big buy in round 18. So it's already getting me 12, 15, and 18. I need to remember the big buys this year. So really, you're looking at them between 2 and 11, and then rounds 19 to 27. To be honest with you there, I don't see them being very relevant through the bye period. It's very hard to miss the start and end of the bye period and have someone you go, yeah, I'd love to own them. They could be around 13 to 17, but it's just a very short window to use guys like that. For the Melbourne Storm, they're obviously a little bit more of a relevant team in general, with a lot of guns that play for that side in the Munsters, Hughes, Harry Grants, Wisharts, Pappenhausen, these types of guys. But they have buys in 2, 12, and 15. So they get through all of their buys by round 15. So that pushes them into a really nice team to have for the back end of the year. But do be aware that they're likely to rest players at the back end for at least one game. So 16 to 27 is an awesome run of games, but probably one resting, which means an extra buy. Let's just say that. But if you bought them in round 16, it's only missing one game likely for the rest of the season, which is awesome. And then having them from round 3 all the way through to round 11 as well is a nice stretch for players in a Storm uniform. It's a very similar schedule to Titans, except for you can buy Storm players in round 16 and get them for the major and minor buy to finish off the buy period. For the Dragons, their buys are in round 3, 12, and then 16. So a minor buy there. And similar situation, you buy them in round 17, or you buy them in round 4, or you can start with them. Not a problem there. I think round 4 it's an okay one to grab them. It's a good stretch of games, but most teams have a good stretch of games through the beginning part of the season. With Dragons, you could buy one fairly easily in round 1 in your starting team, and then they are used as a looper in round 3. For the Knights there, you've got buys in round 4, 18, and 22. So very, very different. The Knights are a team there that doesn't have a buy for the first 2 major and minor buys of that buy period, which is absolutely crazy. So the Knights, you can either start with them, with them having a buy in round 4, completely fine, or you buy them in round 15. So they have an absolute terrific run, basically from round 1 all the way through up until the final major buy, which I think is just absolute gold. And if you just think of some of the potential guns in the Knights team, in Gagai's, in the Lucases, the KPPs, potential Ponga if he's not in Origin, but I think he should be. Whichever of these halves step up, might be one there. Whatever happens in the 9 position with Adam Elliott if he steps up. There's a lot of different guys that you can look at in that Knights uniform that could do a really good job from round 1 for you. And if they're a non-Origin guy, they could be held for a long part of the season. I do think you have to sell them in 18 because they missed 18 and 22. But if you can get through that round 18 as well, then maybe you can hold them for the majority of the season and use them as a looper in round 22. So a really fun team the Knights are, similar to that of Karaz last year. But it's hard to find guys that are undervalued in that Knights setup. For the Wars there, they're looking at round 5, round 15, and 18 for New Zealand. So it's a squad where you can hold them from round 1 all the way through until you've got through the first major buy, the first minor buy, and that's really nice. And then you can buy them after their final buy in the last major buy, the third and final. So 1 to 14 basically. So they're not too bad, but then it's two awkward ones, 15, 18. You can't hold them through that period. So slightly less of a good draw than that of the Knights. For the Doggies, round 6, round 13, and round 16. So they missed both minor buys following the first major buy in 12 and 15, and then in round 6. So they're a team that a little bit awkward at times. You can buy it at a lot of different periods, round 1, round 7, or round 17. And they can help you through, a couple of runs there. Obviously, that first major buy, from round 7 to 12 is cool. And then you could buy them from round 17 to help you in that last major and minor buy. For the Cowboys, buys for them in round 7, round 12, and round 27. So they have such an interesting setup. And the big one here is obviously they're all done. And, apart from their final buy in round 27, but after that first major buy, you've got them through all the minor buys and the next 2 major buys. So Cowboys are going to be absolutely awesome. You think the Drinkwaters, obviously we wish guys like Cotter and stuff could be a play, but the non-Origin guys are going to be awesome, and there'll even be cheapies in there, I think, that could play in Origin setups, which would be great for your teams through that bye period for sure. They could get a job either in starting team / on the bench at certain times. So Cowboys are going to be really fun. For the Eels, you're looking at round 8, 15, and 18. So they have a couple of little runs, but they're not a very exciting team, in my opinion, overall. You can start with them very, very easily, given their first bye in round 8. But then you're holding them, if you hold them through that, you're getting them through to round 14, which is cool. So they're a team that I think you start with them in round 1. You could buy in round 9 for a shorter run, but I think really round 1 is the play for those guys. You get them through the first major and minor, then you'll have to sell. So that's the Eels. For the Seagulls, it's 9, 16, and 19. Again, you get them through the first minor and major, along with the second major. So they're a pretty fun team through that period. So round 10 to 16 is a fun one. There's not too many teams you can get through the first and the second major buy there. So I actually think that giving them a little bit of a green marker is going to be a fun one, actually, just for that starter period with guys that, there's going to be some Origin players, but there will be some that aren't and may step up through that time. It's just a bit of an awkward team. There's lots of Origin guns, and then would you want non-Origin guys through that period? Maybe it is Garrick again, if we go back to the well. Roosters, they are 10, 14, and 17. So there's a lot of buys through the middle. They're also obviously awesome at the start and at the end, but for them, it's a weird one. They have 2 standalone buys, which is pretty crazy. And they're going to play all the major buys and also the minor buys through that entire period. But we did see that teams like the Dolphins last year, if you end up with a lot of them, if you have the odd injury or concussion or cheapie that's not playing, it can be hard to field 17 on those weeks as well. So they have some positive. They have some positives. They also have a couple of negatives as well. So they're an interesting team, that's for sure. For the Panthers, 11, 15, 18. So really good to start with. All the Origin guys, they have a pretty solid schedule, to be fair, given they missed the second and third major buy. So if you were to own a Yo or a Cleary, you could hold them through that entire time. If they had, buys in the minor section or standalone through that period, it would be very, very tough. So it's good for their Origin players, but we know Origin players are hard to hold through that period anyway. But yeah, Panthers just a solid little run. Start of the year, end of the year, not through the middle, unless you're holding them all season. For the Broncos, a terrific start, 1 through 11, but they do have the first and second major buy and then round 20. So they're a really hard team to own through the middle. Just get them after all the buys are done and get their guns. Rabbitohs, you got 12, 19, and 26. So fairly well spread out. Every 7 rounds there, they get a buy from round 12. So a great team to start with. Decent through the middle. So you get them for the first minor buy all the way through until the last minor buy. So a good little stretch of games through that middle period that the Rabbitohs have. And I like them as a team as well that you could actually hold, because if you can hold them through that first major buy, you get them all the way through to 18, and then you could potentially sell them there. And if you are good enough, have only 1 or 2 of them, I think you can keep them potentially through that minor buy as well. So guys could end up being season-long holds, but the guys I think in that team you want as season-long holds, they're probably Origin guys in their Latrell or something like that. So a very interesting team, the Rabbitohs are. The Tigers, they're 12, 15, and 23. I think that they're going to be more of a team that we have at the start of the year and then sell come Origin because of the 12 and the 15. But if things work out okay, you could grab them in 16 as well in that second minor bye. For the Finns, 13, 18, and 21. So you actually get them through from the start all the way through until that first minor bye, which is the exact same as the Sharks. They're the two best teams to have from round 1 all the way through to round 12, apart from the Raiders, who we'll get to, and then you sell them from there, basically. I don't think it's worth keeping any more than one player through that period of the middle with the Dolphins and the Sharkies. And then the Raiders, you actually get them through the first major bye and the first minor bye. From round 1 to 14, they have the best schedule. So they're a team that I think you could definitely focus on as well if things come up right for you in that Raiders setup. So that's everything to go through across all the teams, the best runs, the best buy and sell times. And we'll quickly just do a little bit of a synopsis on the best teams to start with, the best teams to have in different sections through different parts of the NRL draw. So the Raiders there, they have the best start, as I said, from round 1 to 14, the best team to go for. You then have the Dolphins and the Sharks, I think, have the second best starts with 1 to 12 being able to be played from both of those teams. With the Knights, you either start with them or you buy them in round 5. I think they have a really terrific draw overall. And guys, you could have one or two of those guys you could try and hold for the entirety of the season. Buy the Cowboys after the first big buy. Once they've got through that, you then buy them from round 13 and you can hold them for the rest of the year, potentially until that round 27 clash. So if you have one, it's going to be completely fine. You hold your bunnies till round 18. I think they have one of the best schedules in the league as well. And then to finish things off, you have the Storm, the Broncos, and the Tigers. You buy them from round 16, which gets you through the second minor bye, the final major bye, and the final minor bye there, and you can get them through to a lot of the season as well. So there's different runs for different teams, but ultimately be aware that not every team possesses really good fantasy options or Supercoach options. So you need to make sure that you're not just buying them for the sake of the schedule. You're buying them because they have relevance as a scorer, as a money maker, or they just fit really well in your team to complement other teams and other players that you have in your team with their buy schedules as well, and with positionally as well. So that's really a really simple overview without looking at any of the teams across any of the rounds. I didn't want to focus too much on teams. It's more about the buy schedule here and the best times to buy certain teams, and then you can look at the individual players. And some of these teams, it might just not work, and you don't want to buy players from that team because they're not going to be good enough points-wise for you or money-making. So you might scrap them and just go to a different team. It's pretty interesting how it's all going to play out. But this is my first initial reaction and going through a bit of analysis in the early preseason. So thanks so much for watching this one. And I can't wait to get more NRL content out over the next 3 or 4 months to get us through to round 1 in March.